That's Steve Bloom, Mary McGlynn, and Suda51. All this just to light up some demons, huh?
Shadows of the Damned, released in 2011 but is receiving a remaster in 2024 for all current platforms, including Steam and Nintendo Switch. The original game was developed by Grasshopper Manufacture with the likes of Goichi Suda, or Suda51, as head writer, and Shinji Mikami as producer. There's a bit of interest behind the development of this game and the hurdles the team had to go through to get it made under the publishing power of EA, or Electronic Arts. I was able to talk about the development process a bit with Suda51 himself, as I was given the chance to conduct an interview with him during PAX East 2024.
So you were...
Is it okay if this is like on camera? It's not like a promotion, he just wants to join the matter. Yeah. Oh, okay.
This video is sponsored by Red Bull! Get your wings, gamers! I also got to play the live demo of the remaster at their booth and was happy to report it plays swimmingly. According to Grasshopper community deputy Maddie, we were all playing the Steam version. The frame rate has been heavily improved, targeting 60 FPS. You can skip some of the cutscenes, which is a blessing for replays or speedrunning, and the sofa was comfy. That's all I have to say about the demo, as everyone was only granted 15 minutes to play. Even so, I'm looking forward to the port. The only official means to get this game right now is a second-hand copy for PS3 or Xbox 360. The later version is playable on Xbox One and Series, but EA delisted it from the marketplace years ago. I'm going to have a lot of fun revisiting the game via this upcoming remaster, and I'm excited for people interested, as it'll soon be an easy way to buy and get to playing on whatever current platform they desire. And for those that are unaware of Shadows of the Damned, don't worry, there's no spoilers in the interview I conducted with Suda. We talked about the remaster, but also the development of the original game. I did my best trying to clean up the audio and provide visual context when I feel it's needed. Hope you enjoy it. So, the first question I asked about was his involvement with the remaster.
In 2011, you served as scenario writer for Shadows of the Damned. What is your current role for the remaster? How hands-on have you been in this project?
今回は本当に制作総指揮っていうのが一番ふさわしいですかね。そのポジションで今回のダムドのリマスターを実現させるために動きました。
I guess the easiest way to describe his role would be general director. He's been pretty hands-on, just making sure everything is as it's supposed to be, making sure everything's working out. And again, he also served as the writer of the original, so he's probably the guy to go to for advice and stuff like that.
I'm glad he's overlooking the project, as we've seen what happens when the likes of Grasshopper are not involved in the ports or remasters of their own games. My question was about what sort of new goodies we can expect from this remaster.
So when the Silver Case and the 25th Ward were remastered for modern platforms, you and the team provided new chapters and content. Are there any plans like that for Shadows of the Damned? Also, what are some enhancements or new features we can expect from the remaster?
I felt the need to phrase it the way I did, since I was most curious about the prosperity of new story content, like we got for the Silver Case and the 25th Ward.
2つあります。1つ目はニューゲームプラスですね。これは当時から僕自身も実現したかったんですけど、当時のスペックの問題だったりとか、処理の問題で結局断念したんです。
So there are two new additions to the remaster.
Okay.
The first one is actually one that he's been wanting to do for a really long time. It's New Game Plus. That's something that he wanted to put in the original Shadows of the Damned back when it was first released, but due to various reasons, just weren't able to. Some of it was like spec related, timeline related. Just they weren't able to, and he's always kind of regretted that. So adding New Game Plus to the remaster has been something that he kind of had in his head for years. The second thing is there's a handful of new costumes for the main character Garcia.
Oh,
so
more than one.
Theres this one. 何個入ってるか言っちゃって大丈夫ですか？4個。
いいよ。
You talk about that. There's 4 new costumes, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
Maybe 4.
Maybe. Okay. I gotcha.
Of course, for something as story-heavy as those aforementioned visual novels, what new content could there be besides new chapters? I guess by that logic, it makes more sense that the Shadows remaster bears new content that affects gameplay. But hey, for all I know, they're keeping certain stuff under wraps. Who knows? I asked Suda how he felt about the characters over a decade later, mostly Garcia and Fleming.
Garcia has become a favorite among Grasshopper fans, some even loving him as much as Travis Touchdown. What do you appreciate the most about him as a character, Garcia?
一番は、ね、恋人のポーラが、とんでもない悪魔王に連れ去られて、普通の人間は腰が引けるわけですよ。絶対助けに行けないんですよね。でもガルシアはわざわざ地獄まで行くっていうね。やっぱ男の中の男ですよ。
The part that he likes the best about Garcia, the thing he appreciates most is he's like a man among men. I mean, his girlfriend, the love of his life, she gets kidnapped by this like badass like demon and taken to hell. And most people in that or a similar situation would be like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do about that? But this dude's like, well, I guess I'm going to hell then. And he literally just goes straight into hell and starts kicking demon ass. He's like, I'm gonna, this is the woman I love. I'm gonna go save her. I'm gonna take her back. Most people in a situation like that, like they'd probably break down or just crumble in fear or whatever. But this dude, he's like, no. There's no question about it.
I have to go.
I got to get back. I got to get down there. I got to get her back. He gets shit done, and that again, that sort of like man among men aspect of Garcia is probably his favorite part.
Awesome.
Suda clearly likes Garcia a lot, and I don't blame him. He's a man dedicated to the love of his life, Paula. He doesn't question for even a second if he's doing the right thing. He just goes with his gut, confident in his own ability. And regarding Garcia's design, he was a considerably unique character for 2011 plopped into a third-person shooter, where the leading role is usually a big, brutish white dude, if not a blank slate. Garcia being a lanky Latino who spoke his mind constantly was definitely refreshing to see. That in itself definitely speaks for where the game industry was for a while, but still managed to stick out from the rest.
So what are your thoughts on the rest of the cast, such as Johnson, Paula, and Fleming? I have a feeling that you have an especially strong liking or affinity to Fleming. As you mentioned during interviews, he almost made it into No More Heroes 3. And I've even seen his face show up in recent art pieces for the studio. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on the characters, especially Fleming, the main villain?
もう一つ、あとこのリマスター作ってる時に、そういえばこういうことあったなっていう。The art pieces of Fleming.
It was. I couldn't find it immediately. But when you opened up the new studio, I saw you showed artwork of it was an art piece you gave to the staff, and it showed a head of Travis, a different character, and Fleming. I remember, I saw Fleming on there, and I was like, oh, he must really like Fleming the most. This is maybe 2 years ago. When you opened up the new studio.
ナビキスタジオをオープンした時に、多分スタッフとなんだろうな。
そうそう、本当フレミングは好きですね。そう、本当はノーマルヒーロー3ではシナリオまで書いたんだけども、結局スケジュール的にちょっと NG だったので諦めたんですけど。
Actually, yeah, he's as you said, he definitely does have an affinity for Fleming. He likes him so much that, again, as you said, he had plans to put him in No More Heroes 3 as one of the the actual proper bosses. He was going to fight Travis, but he actually began writing that scenario and everything. But unfortunately, due to schedule and time restraints, he didn't have enough time to finish it.
Right.
So instead of doing it just a half-assed job, he said, "Okay, I'm just going to give up on it for now."
Okay.
I had no idea Fleming was being considered as an entire boss fight for No More Heroes 3. To be honest, I had more questions regarding this connection between Shadows and No More Heroes that never saw the light of day, but we didn't have time to get into it. Perhaps I'll get another chance to ask down the line. My next question asked about the memories resurfacing during this process. I recall Suda spoke about the Silver Case remaster and how the production resurfaced old memories of making that late 90s PS1 game and how it helped revive that drive inside him to design and direct games again.
It's been more than 12 years since Shadows hit consoles. Looking back now, what does the game and the experience of its original production mean to you personally? Has the production of the remaster brought up any old memories or helped you appreciate Shadows in any new ways?
いやもうダムドを作った時はいろんなことがあって、まあ、一番はまず三上さんとのやっぱ思い出ですよね。三上さんはもう最初から参加してくれて、本当に最初からっていうのはプロジェクトの最初じゃなくて EA にプレゼンに行くところまでから最初だったんですよ。 EA だったりアクティだったりとか、当時ルーカスアーツも行きましたし THQ も行きましたね。どこ行ったっけな、あと3つぐらい。そう本当にアメリカのパブリッシャーを本当に三上さんと一緒に回ってっていうところから参加してもらって。
There's a lot of things that kind of came flooding back to him, memory-wise, experience-wise, revisiting Shadows of the Damned. One part of the game and the process of creating the game that really sticks out in his memory is Mikami's involvement with it. Mikami was involved from the beginning, but he doesn't mean from the point they started making the game. Mikami was actually involved from the point where they came up with the game and started going to different publishers to pitch it. Like they went to EA, obviously, they went to LucasArts, they went to Activision, THQ Nordic, a handful of other publishers as well. He was with them from the very start, like pitching the game with them, bouncing ideas off each other and stuff. The experience that he had with together with Mikami was kind of similar to the experience of the two main characters in the game. It was kind of like a road trip that they took together, going through this like strange land they're not that familiar with, like meeting all these like weird people and overcoming all sorts of obstacles and stuff like that. Just kind of jumping around, do lots of it. But his experiences with Mikami, both pitching and actually making the game once it finally got decided, that's something that those are some really treasured memories of his. A lot of things actually happened leading up to and during the production of the game. Some of them are really great memories. Some of them are not so great memories. Some of them are things that are actually kind of painful to remember at all. But one of the things that really sticks out in his memory is what's referred to in Japan as the 3/11 disaster, which is on March 11, 2011. There was a really big earthquake. It's called the Great Toho earthquake. That happened as they were developing the game, and it was obviously it was a huge shock to Japan in general, but a really shock to him and to Grasshopper at the time as well, because they basically weren't able to. They had to kind of stop production. Everybody, the country is kind of in panic mode, and at the time there were about 20 non-Japanese staff members at Grasshopper, and a bit over half of them ended up pretty much immediately going back to their home countries. And some of them weren't able to come back. Some of them, by the time they would have been able to come back, had already moved on to something else. Some of the Japanese staff were also, going through some hardships at the time due to the earthquake. There was a time in 2011 where production was completely stopped altogether, and things got really iffy about how the future of this game was going to turn out. It wasn't all just terrible bad experiences. Again, there were some things that he'd rather not look back on, some things that are great to look back on. But just talking about the things that even just the main things that stick out in his memory when it comes to creating Shadows of the Damned, he could go on and on for hours about that. It was a real roller coaster ride, basically, of awesome things, terrible things, and just weird things that you kind of experienced and saw.
I liked hearing about how much he cherished his time with Mikami. Clearly this project was important to both of them. Although, upon immediate reflection, Suda wanted to add some context to how he's talking about the original game's production.
ちなみに補足すると、思い出したくもない嫌な記憶っていうのはEA との関係じゃないので、EA との関係性は逆に今思い出すと逆に楽しい記憶なので、そこは誤解のないように言っておきます。
One thing he wants to add on to that is, he just mentioned there was a lot of bad memories and not so good memories he has about working on Shadows of the Damned. He wants to make sure that people don't misunderstand this or read into things that he's not saying, but he's absolutely not talking about his relationship with EA at the time. And this isn't sarcasm. He, looking back on it now, he actually had a lot of fun working with EA and working on the game. A lot of people tend to have these different views and different opinions on how development went between him and becoming EA, but he's not trying to subtly diss EA or anything. That's not at all what he's talking about. He just wanted to clarify that.
This moment had me, in turn, reflect a bit on how I discussed this in the past. If I had more time to talk to Suda, I would have asked for further elaboration on certain things depicted in things like Koriyami Dance or Travis Strikes Again. But at the same time, I don't think many creators want to explain plainly what they were going for with certain elements, scenarios, those kinds of things. I'm also a strong believer that a lot of art, with all of its social commentary, personal thoughts, or messages, is made on a subconscious level. I also understand that maybe I do read too much into certain things. That's fine by me though. I have fun trying to analyze and dissect his work myself. I also don't expect simple yes or no answers when analyzing any piece of media here. The point is, I guess, while Suda has let out some grievances regarding the production of Shadows, it probably just comes down to the usual struggles of developing games at this scale. I'm sure not a single one of his big projects were easy paths. All of Grasshopper's games are group efforts, with multiple studios, publishers, etc. Things are going to get tough. That's just the nature of the business. And also, Suda obviously doesn't want to dwell on that. What's the point? He's a man always looking forward, after all. Even so, I asked him to talk a bit further about the game's development, specifically what kinds of elements the likes of EA were not agreeing with at the time.
Shadows of the Dam was a years-long production, maybe a little rocky in some parts, a little, difficult in some places. Were there any concepts or certain elements that you wish that could have been put into the final game that just didn't happen to make it into the original production?
最初はジョンソンの役割っていうのが、多分シナリオ第2項かな第1項かなちょっと覚えてないんですけども、それはポーラなんですよ。ポーラが銃だったんですね。で銃のデザインっていうのもここにテレビモニターがあって銃の中にポーラが住んでるんですよ。でポーラもこういう成長した女性じゃなくて幼女、小さい女の子で。
One thing in particular that he was really kind of bummed that he wasn't able to keep in the game, the original form of Johnson, or I guess maybe more specifically Paula. Now you've got Johnson who turns into the gun, and turns into a gun and uses Johnson to shoot. Originally Paula was going to be the gun, and she wasn't going to be like a fully grown woman. She was actually like a little girl, and you had a gun that was called the closer gun. And on this gun was kind of like a TV screen, and she lived inside the screen. And so yeah, when you shoot the gun, you have Paula on there like screaming, yelling and stuff, this little girl. And she was basically the original Johnson. And again, before Paula, as we know her now, was a character. He believes it was maybe the first or second draft of the scenario is where she first came out. And he really wanted to keep that in the game. Mikami also was really excited about it. They were both really kind of disappointed that for one reason or another it ended up getting scrapped. But that's one thing that he really wished he could have kept in, and one thing that, again, even now he thinks back on some time, he's like, damn, I would have liked to have tried that out.
I'm just curious, hearing that now, were you inspired by Dead Space? Because Dead Space had all the screens on the guns and on his suit. You would see there was no HUD. A screen came out showing you things, like in Dead Space. Was that an inspiration back then?
多分デッドスペースが発売される前だと思うから、全然ね。
It wasn't nothing like that, but it was a little similar.
He doesn't think Dead Space. He thinks Dead Space might not even been released at the time when it came up with that. So
that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. If it's okay to ask, like talking about things that didn't make it or did make it, was there anything when production was happening? Was there anything that was like they might have not have been approving of, or maybe something they didn't want to leave in there? But because I remember Mikami-san said he fought for certain aspects to stay in there. I was just wondering if there are any stories like that, like anything that they didn't necessarily approve of, but it made it to the final game anyway.
できたのは、だからさっきの要素も EA から大反対されて、僕と三上さんが本当もう
ポーラの銃の
そうもう喧嘩して本当にもう、当時だから、なかなか環境なかったんですけども EA ジャパンにリモート環境があったからテレビ電話で話をしながらもう絶対ダメだみたいな絶対こうやって面白いからみたいな感じで
Actually, there weren't that many things that they had to really fight to keep in the game.
Okay.
When they first started making the game, when they first they got the deal with EA and they started actually getting into to developing the game itself. they had a lot of fights with EA Japan.
Japan. Okay.
And they'd go into EA Japan and get on like basically what would now be like Zoom or something, you know, with EA like North America or the other EA partners, you know. And they'd basically just start yelling at each other for stuff. Like, for example, like the gun that he just mentioned with like the tiny Paula in it. Both he and Mikami were like, no, you know, we really want to put this in the game. We really want to keep that in there. And they got told, no, we do not keep this in the game. And you know why? It's because you guys don't understand. You know, maybe you don't get the culture or something here, but Americans hate little girls. Just like all Americans, they hate little girls. They're not going to want that shit in the game. You can't put that in the game. Nobody's going to want a little girl and a gun in a game. You cannot do that. And then they'd be like, well, what the hell? You want us to make this game? We're going to make the goddamn game. And there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of negative back and forth over what they can and can't do. Both Suda himself and Mikami would, you know, they'd argue a lot, again, you know, about what they can and can't do, what they can and can't put in the game. And a lot of that arguing had to do with the gun.
This bit really caught me off guard and almost killed me. It made me think of two cases that were released around the same time they made this claim.
It's funny that you say like America hates little girls or whatever, because around the same time, I don't know if you know Dead Rising, the second game, one of the main characters that you had to take care of was a little girl, and everyone loved that game. And like The Last of Us, there's Ellie, she's pretty young. Like, that's so weird that they said that.
どっから来たんだろうっていうぐらい。
いや僕も今だに分からないんだよ。とにかくもう小さいのがわめくし騒がしいし、もう全てストレスでしかないですで銃構えて敵を撃つとギャーって笑うんですよ
He said, to this day, he has no idea where this like Americans hate little girls thing comes from. And he was super pissed because he's like, we had this awesome gun. It's like, you know, there's a little girl in the gun, and you know, when you shoot the gun, she goes, wah, and like kind of screams, and when you miss, she goes. And gets kind of pissed off, and you know, when you run out of bullets, like until you reload, she starts like crying and like, you know, making noises and stuff. And you reload, she calms down, she chills out, and they're like, "This is an awesome gun. This is the perfect gun design. This is badass." And they were like, "No, no way." And so he was just like, "What the hell, man?" But they told him, "No, Americans hate little girl characters because they're loud and they're annoying and they cry and they whine, and it's going to be nothing but stress for American players. So there's no way you can put a little girl in your game." So cool, you know.
As we were discussing this, Suda talked about the latter half of the original game's development, how the publishers were just as exhausted about the process.
He feels that at some point, I guess, the publishers were just like, you know what? Like, we keep telling these guys, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this, and they keep either like, you know, bitching us out, or, you know, pushing back really hard on stuff, or just straight up not listening. Maybe let's just let them do their thing then, because at some point they just kind of stopped saying, stop that, you know, do that, stop that. So thankfully, yeah, there actually weren't that many things that that they really had to fight to keep in the game that are actually still in the game.
I've made assumptions about EA strongly holding the game near the end of its production, but it turns out the exact opposite happened. Judging from what Suda said, it seems like once it was finalized as a third-person shooter, the two got tired of fighting about elements and let Grasshopper do their thing. Some time ago, they announced that an unlockable costume for Garcia would be Wataru's attire from Kuriyami Dance, a 2-volume manga Suda wrote back in 2015. I've yet to really dive into the story and what I believe it represents, but it felt appropriate asking Suda about the manga and its relationship to Shadows of the Damned.
Something fans might not be as familiar with, the relationship Shadows has with the 2015 manga you wrote, Kuriyami Dance. It feels appropriate as you announced earlier that the main character, Wataru Kaido, I believe his name is, his outfit is going to be a selectable costume for the remaster. If I'm not mistaken, you've stated that the volume 2 of that manga derives from a script you had written for the early draft of Shadows. Is that correct? And if so, is volume 1 based on anything in particular?
Actually, both volumes 1 and 2 of Kuriyami Dance were based on early drafts of Shadows of the Damned. When he first started writing them, they were. It was either the first, second, or third draft of Shadows of the Damned that, again, when he started writing Kurami Dance, it was based on those drafts. But as he continued writing it up and, tweaking things here and there, eventually Kurami Dance itself also became something very different from what it was when he first started out. So what the manga ended up becoming was actually very different from the first draft, or from the draft of Shadows of the Damned it was based on, which is also very different from how Shadows of the Damned itself turned out. They all did come from basically the same origin point, but they all kind of split off into their own different things. But as he started writing more and more about Kamikaze Wataru or Wataru Kaido, he just started fleshing things out more and choosing to go different directions. And again, a lot like Shadows of the Damned, just kind of evolved into something different.
For those that might not know, Suda has said in the past that they had to write 5 separate scripts for Shadows, as the first 4 were wholly rejected by the publisher. One of the many struggles the dev team faced regarding the production. Suda states 2 of those 5 scripts were worked into Kurami Dance as a whole story, and even then, the manga shares some elements with the final game. And we can talk about a 3rd script too. The last question I got to ask was regarding Black Knight's Sword, a 2012 downloadable game for PS3 and Xbox 360 they developed alongside Digital Reality.
So another piece I feel like is not known as well is Black Knight's Sword. From what I understand, this is based on another early draft of Shadows, and you gave it to Ren Yamazaki in order for him to direct it. Have you or your team considered remastering that game in the future, or if that's even possible? I'm not sure if you have the rights, if Grasshopper has the rights to Black Knight's Sword.
もう正しいですね。僕が確か第4項かな、ちょっと山崎に行かないと覚えてないですけども、彼にその時の途中ボツになったシナリオを渡して、山ちゃんこれで作ってブラックナイトソードって。
As far as the rights go for Black Knight Sword, we actually don't own the rights to it, unfortunately. As far as we know, the rights belong to THQ Nordic, but we're not really sure exactly what's up with THQ Nordic at the moment either. Black Knight Sword and another title, Cinemora. They were 2 titles that the Grasshopper made together with a company called Digital Reality in Hungary. And I guess they went under. The rights were picked up by THQ Nordic. And a few years ago, they THQ Nordic actually came to Suda to talk to him about buying back the rights to Black Knight Sword. Unfortunately, at the time, we weren't with NetEase just yet, or we weren't NetEase yet, and didn't really have the resources or even really the time to work on something like that. So had to turn it down. But it's something that would be cool to, if it were possible, it would be cool to maybe try and revisit, or at least consider revisiting at some point. But at this point, we're not really sure what's up with the rights. All we know is we don't have them, so it's a bit complicated.
It's a shame that Grasshopper cannot retain the rights to this game, at least partially. So with that, Suda has one last message he wants to make loud and clear.
知り合いを通じてその THQ ノディックの人を前でそれいいやもしこの記事をね THQ ノディックの誰かがもし見たとしたらグラスソッパーに連絡ください
If there's anyone from THQ Nordic out there watching this or reading this, call us at Grasshopper. We'd like to talk to you.
Okay.
The 45 minutes with Suda went by in an instant for me. I had so many more questions to ask, but I'll have to save it for another time. Suda was so goddamn cool and had this fun energy surrounding him. I am extremely grateful for his PR folks that made this opportunity possible. I also have to thank everybody that's been following me and supporting me these past years, working on Grasshopper's videos and actually managing to get the attention from the dev team themselves. Thank you so much for all these years of support. I hope you all enjoyed this video and are looking forward to Shadows of the Damned Hella Remastered. I'll catch you next time.